clear so I can actually read it.
Oh, here we go. And it says that we are live on the YouTubes. Welcome to the Westlake Charter School September 2021 board meeting. Board President Golick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Ike. So just real quickly, some housekeeping business. This meeting is being held pursuant to Executive Order N29-20, which everyone can stay on and learn more about during my Brown Act presentation at the end of this meeting. There is a slide dedicated to that. But this executive order authorizes local legislative bodies to hold public meetings via teleconference and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically and participate versus the teleconference. Further instructions on how to electronically participate are at the bottom of our agenda on our website. And that will just tell you how you can make both an oral and written public comment. If you are making a comment via email, we ask that it be limited to 250 words and that you clearly identify what you're wishing to speak on in the subject line. With that, Amy, will you please take the roll?
Yes, happy to. Hope?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Michelle? Jamie?
Yes.
Lila?
Yes.
Shannon? Fred? Okay.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate everyone being here. This is our minimum for quorum. So it is really nice that I appreciate the four of you coming out to make sure we can have this meeting tonight. That's not my celebration though, but I will go ahead and kick those off. Janie, would you mind going first, followed by Lila?
Sure. I am going to celebrate that the weather is getting cooler. I can't handle the 100 degrees anymore. Hope you were talking about cherry on top of the day. Like the heat is just like, I'm just like, no more, please. I can only do so many things in a day. So I'm really excited for it to continue to get cooler and then fall to come. Fall's my favorite season. So I'm excited for that to come.
Yeah, and you got the double treat today, right, Janie? Because not only did you have the heat, you had the humidity from the monsoon moisture coming through.
So all things. Yep.
I feel for you. I'm not a heat person either. Lila and then Josh.
I'm a little nervous. My internet connection's a little spotty, so we're going to keep fingers crossed. I am going to celebrate our activities director here at the high school, Abby Grimaldi. She is just fantastic. We could not have a better activities director. Today at lunch, she had students in her classroom. We are getting ready to finalize club options and club rush. And so students were out today trying to identify club advisors. So it was like, people were like popping out from the hallway being like, Miss McIver, do you like dance? And it was like, I feel like this is a trick question. So it's just been kind of this great moment here at the high school as we're trying to do that. And Abby Grimaldi is the brains behind the operation that is making it all happen.
Thanks, Lila. Josh and then Sean.
Good evening. I want to celebrate commitment to community. Reason being is it sounds like there were some issues with traffic that was, passed along to the school, and it could have gone one of two ways. Whatever, we're here, deal with it, or it could have gone the way that Westlake did it. And to see so quickly new signs out front today, to see admin staff everywhere on the streets, making sure we're being good neighbors and being good citizens and working with the community. And I thought that was a great thing to see. Not only how quick we flipped it, but John, with your message over the weekend, and then to see it in action first thing Tuesday morning. And it just shows, we are about community and creating citizens. And I think that reflected it 100%.
Thanks, Josh. Sean?
So that was kind of what I was going to say, but I will add on to it. As somebody who's driving to pick their kid up, it's not just benefiting the neighborhood community, but it's benefiting the Westlake community, because I was forever concerned about, as I was making a left turn, that I might run over somebody who was jaywalking, or so that I try to look everywhere, but I can't look everywhere all the time. And so yes, it was in response to neighborhood community concerns, but it's benefiting everybody. So I appreciate that as a parent.
This isn't my celebration, but I'll go ahead and share. My daughter did her first behind the wheel class this morning before school. And this class happened to take her past Westlake during drop off. And let's just say she has a new appreciation for the rules and why one might be, a little nervous driving around a school at drop off time in the morning. So that was interesting to get that feedback. My actual celebration, though, is on Monday because it was a holiday. Let me have the opportunity to go and cheer on our volleyball players at John Adams Academy. And so it was fabulous to see really our core values in action. Perseverance really jumped out at me during the game, but I really encourage all the board members, once households are permitted, or if you can get to an away game in other counties, to take the opportunity to go out and cheer our explorers on, because it was really nice to see, and really something that when I started on this board 10 years ago, I'm not sure I ever imagined having the opportunity to see. So with that, Steve or Amy or Amber, do you want to celebrate? You want to go first? And then Steve and then Amy.
So I also was going to celebrate what Josh did, because I think it's fantastic. And I've heard from so many parents saying how happy they are that we're addressing it. But I'll celebrate one other thing. My 8th grader a few days ago said he was going to present something in social studies, and then he got to present to my 5th grader. And so I didn't know, like with some of the changes, if the siblings would see each other. And so it was just cool because they were both so excited and they were able to, interact that way. And so I'm just glad we're still able to do things like that.
Thanks, Amber. Steve and then Amy.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I think I will give a shout out and celebration to the traffic initiative as well. I was out and about today and met some parents and met some neighbors and got some great comments from neighbors like, hey, I see you guys are out here you're doing some good work. I think the sandwich board signs are working. And just, say, hey, send us the praise. Feel free to send us, can you tweak this a little bit? I think from my perspective, it might work look a little better. So I know, just great connecting with our community. And we had volunteers out front too, kind of helping the way. So all that together was a great day.
It's me, right? Okay. I've been holding on to this one. I would love to celebrate and acknowledge our 1st grade team. Our school dismissal manager has not been as fabulous as it has been in years past. And so we've just been kind of like doing the best we can to get kids in the right cars and quickly. And our 1st graders have been out, our 1st grade teachers have been out to help us at dismissal. And we didn't even ask them. They just showed up with their kids and started getting kids in cars. And it was really cool and always great to have some extra hands with the littles. So thank you to 1st grade.
Thanks, Amy. And then John, I always ask, but yours are in your executive director update or report, or do you want to do one now?
I do have slides, but I would like to actually just shout out our WAVE president, Amber Husted. She's on the podcast every week. You may see her face around from time to time. She does just about everything you could ever imagine as a volunteer. And she has just set up the spirit storage I think she's going to talk about tonight. If you see 3 good things happening at Westlake Charter School, chances are 2 of them are probably coming from Amber Husted. So I just want to publicly say thanks. She is amazing, and we appreciate you more than you could possibly know.
With that brings us to I did hit everybody, right? Everyone? Yeah, I think so. Okay. That brings us to other board comments. Did board members have any comments for items not on the agenda tonight? Not seeing any. That brings us to our public comment portion. This first portion is for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Any comments received will be limited to 2 minutes per person. And if you need to understand sort of some of the rules around that public comment, please feel free to look at our agenda. With that, John, have we received any comments or have any public speakers at this time?
We do have one email in the email tank here. It's a public comment. If I look at it, I don't think it pertains particularly to an item, so I think it's probably appropriate to do right now during public comments. We also have one person waiting in the waiting room right now, and I would ask Mr. Korvink to maybe ask the person in the waiting room like what they want to speak on. Is it a general comment or is it attached to any of the items on the agenda? Hope, is that how it plays? If you want to talk about something that's specific to the agenda, you wait till that agenda is moment?
Exactly.
All right, cool. Steve, if you could ask our first ever live participant, which I'm super excited about. I hope the technology works. But I'll read this while you do that. Public comment for board meeting. I want to extend a welcome to the two newest board members, Mrs. MacGyver and Mrs. Leggett, as well as my appreciation for them giving their time to take on this responsibility. Additionally, we have seen a smooth start to our brand new high school, and that is thanks to the endless energy and dedication of Mrs. Batten and her team. From our family's perspective, the sports program has been an absolute gem, and we are super excited that our 9th grader has had the opportunity to do 2 sports while continuing her education and growth with the Westlake community, which is such a wonderful environment. My sincere hope is that we can soon get our community back together for both the K-8 and high school with some in-person, outdoor, masked, and socially distanced events, whether those are new variations of long-standing annual gatherings or something as simple as families meeting a teacher in person. The family-school relationship has been integral to the development of Westlake's culture, and while the virtual events have been terrific and well done, we're eager to see school staff and families interacting and engaging with each other again in safe environments. Thank you, Carissa Richards Johnson.
Dear Mrs. Johnson. I know that I, in particular, am missing chili cook-off. Many of you know that is personally one of my favorite Westlake events. So I dream of the day where we can all get back together and start eating some chili. Thank you very much for that public comment. Steve or John, I don't know how this is working. Were we able to confirm the subject matter of our oral comment?
Yes, I'm talking with the attendee right now. If I can just get one moment, please.
Yes, thanks, Steve.
So it's very exciting for those who don't know. For the first time ever, we've set up a second room where if you want to make a oral comment, you can jump into that room. Steve's going to present that room on our screen. I'll take down what I'm presenting to you now, which is the agenda, and he'll put that up. And you know what could possibly go wrong? We're live on YouTube. I'm sure the technology will be flawless, but we're going to give it our best try. We tested it today.
Hey, John, can you send me that public comment, please, while we're waiting?
Oh, absolutely. I'll forward that to you via email.
Sir?
Steve unmuted briefly, but I think he might be working on it still.
Steve, I was filling time. I was doing the stretch there.
Sorry, yeah. If I could just have a moment of quiet so I can hear the candidate. Otherwise, I get both groups talking at once.
God,
sorry.
Don't, Phil.
Thank you. Don't, Phil. Thank you.
This was unanticipated.
Yes.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Mr.
Hello.
Corrigan.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, there was a conflict in audio there. Yes, we have someone who would like to make a comment on one of the consent items that's on the agenda tonight.
Perfect. So we will go ahead and we'll take that public comment when we reach item or section 7 of our agenda.
Great, thank you.
With that, we will go ahead and begin our reports with Amber Husted and the WAVE report.
Hi. So, Mr. Ike, Dr. Ike, sorry. Oh, I gotta work on that. I'm gonna make a note. Stole my thunder. I'm just kidding. We kind of planned this out where he'll hopefully show a little sneak peek later too. So we are launching a spirit store. It's brand new. We have more items than we've ever had before. It's really fantastic. We're super excited about it. I mean, there's like tumblers, there's water bottles, there's so many things, so many different hats, and it's exciting because our mascot is everywhere. And then we have our high school logo. So there's just a lot of options, and we're really excited about launching that. We had our second WAVE meeting of the year on Tuesday, and that went really well. We're getting parents to join committees. I am really excited about launching some of the 9th grade committees and activities, though. We have a fantastic team of 9th grade parents who are going to work with Mrs. Grimaldi to plan events and to bring some of the parent side to it as well. And then we are also launching a committee for sports fundraising. And so WAVE is going to kind of have its own little sports fundraising branch that will be separate financially, basically, but still under the WAVE umbrella. So we'll start fundraising for sports, which is just thrilling. I'm really excited to add another layer of WAVE. And then we have a full set of classroom grade level liaisons. And then we're filling the classroom ambassador positions. And I think we're about 50% of the way there. So we're doing well with that. And it's nice to have parents finding ways to volunteer, but like on campus with the traffic initiative right now, with walking school bus, those types of things, parents are finding ways to help a little bit on campus, which is nice. And so those are pretty much the things that are going on with us right now. We are working on some virtual events, like maybe doing like a virtual trivia night, maybe a game night, kind of like the way Dr. Ike did it with staff, where it was like breakout rooms for different games, that type of thing. So we're gonna work with you on that, because I know you have all the ideas. So we're just coming up with some virtual events and trying to make it fun, keep our community connected, and then just keep things moving along.
Bingo was really fun virtually. I mean, I also, love a good bingo game. So, selfish there a little.
Right, that's kind of one of the thoughts, is like have bingo, maybe have a couple other game rooms. If you don't like bingo, then you can go over here. But if you love bingo, here it is. So
yeah,
we'll make it
totally.
work.
And boosters. I mean, it's basically like a sports boosters club, right?
Totally.
Which I think is awesome. So thank you for all the work you do, Amber. I mean, I don't know where you get all your energy. I really don't. It's outstanding. With that brings us to our Charter Impact Committee report. And in Shannon's absence, it's my understanding that Lila's going to give the update tonight. No? Yes?
I am. Yes, I am up to give the update. We had a great meeting 2 weeks ago, and during that meeting, we finalized a set of recommendations to administration to improve hiring practices. So in this effort, there is an emphasis and awareness of the importance that our staff at Westlake reflect the identities and experiences and the diversity of our community and our families and our students as well. So you'll see that tonight as the white paper on the consent agenda. And it was developed in support of our strategic plan goal area number 1, the objectives 1 and 4, as well as goal area number 5. And, it's so important to take some time right now just to acknowledge during this year-long process of developing these recommendations, those committee members who have been part of it, their commitment and their work. So our chair, Shannon Simons, as well as Hope, Shara Murphy, and Anna Thomas also, who have all been important in the process of developing these recommendations.
Thanks, Layla. I'll go ahead and just get a quick shout out to Dr. Lochtef, who we were lucky enough to have him serve on this committee for a long time, and to thank you because you jumped right in with both feet. And it was as if you've been on the committee the whole time. So thank you so much for doing that and for giving the report tonight. It's kind of like trial by fire for a new committee member too. So excellent job. Thank you so much. With that brings us to Josh and the development committee report.
All right, thank you, Hope. So we are still working on finalizing our goals, but they're going to be based around a couple of different areas. Raising money for the Museum of Tolerance, raising money to, support the high school and getting that off the ground, and also growing the committee. And I think we're working on that one. We're working on that one tonight. So a lot of good stuff. I love the fact that, we've got people interested in the committee, and please continue to spread the word that we want to grow our committee. I think with ours, we need to have a lot of different people, different facets, whether it's grant writing, web page design, newsletters, postcards, community outreach. We've got a lot of irons in the fire, and want to welcome, anyone to come check out a meeting and see if we can't continue to grow that committee, through parents and other volunteers that want to get involved.
Hear, hear. Another hear, hear. We have a lot to celebrate tonight, really, don't we? I mean, it's not a long agenda, but it's a happy one. With that, Sean, you want to give a finance update?
Sure. So at our last meeting, I did not prepare for this, which I normally do. We voted on our goals and our calendar. And then we continued our discussion of the credit and purchasing policies, which is continuing into the next meeting. And we started our review of compensation, which will continue over multiple meetings as per the calendar, which we voted on. And that's what we did.
Thank you for the reminder that I have homework I need to do. That's why we have these updates, right? With that, governance did not meet tonight, so I do not have an update. Dr. Ike, your executive director report.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to tonight's Brown Act training. I love it. I love that I'm a big fan of our trainer, so can't wait till that show starts. I'll try and be quick. I've got celebrations, strategic actions, and updates. A couple of them, though, are like, things I want to put on the table today and have us at the front of mind, because this is a time where there's a lot of change at the beginning of this year, so we want to talk through those pieces. But let's start with some celebrations. Obviously, Explore Athletics is absolutely, like Mrs. Johnson said, it's a gem. I mean, it's just amazing. We have 3 medalists in cross country. Our volleyball team is absolutely on fire, playing incredibly, but more so playing with spirit and really demonstrating our core values. And our boys soccer team is about to launch. And so just great stuff happening right there. Back to school night was a phenomenal success. I mean, I think we all, like Mrs. Johnson, wish it was in person, but due to the situation, I mean, I could not be more proud of the connections that are being made in the virtual platform. And someday, let's see ourselves a bridge back to in person. The parent support, I kind of called out Husted tonight. Obviously, we're big fans of Mrs. Johnson, but all of our parent support. I think this is just kind of an interesting slide, because I was looking at like the 2019 September board report, and we were up to 44% of our supply donation. Here we are, 2021, we're at 43%, we're only off by 1%. So much has changed, and yet so much hasn't changed. Our families are incredibly supportive of the work that we do, and we couldn't do it without our families. And so just a nice shout out to say thank you for our parent support. Like it was mentioned earlier, even parents volunteering in the traffic campaign out in the parking lot. Hey, if you missed this, Labor Day weekend in Sacramento is always, chalk it up weekend. And it started off downtown and is now spread across the whole town. And thanks to our partners at Jibe, they sponsored a couple of squares right out by the flagpole. And our 8th grade Explorer artists went out there and just crushed it. I personally loved the skateboarding theme. I loved what they did. I think they did a great job, and I was super proud of those students. They got to have their work on display and shown as part of our community and being part of the greater community of Chalk It Up. Such great stuff. And I just love this little picture of the Oasis, this backyard, this space that we all watched build over the summer to become the outdoor space of the high school. So the high school could be an extension of our K-8, so that indoor-outdoor learning, flexible seating thing came to life at this high school. And this is a gem. I can't wait to have all of you back there. I know I've already said that we should have a board meeting out there under the stars. It would just be magnificent. The Oasis is really becoming a focal point for our students. They own it out there. It's fantastic. And then our base program under new leadership led by Allison Chavez has gone through a little renaissance, and it's doing some really cool stuff. You can see it open at lunch, and that ping pong table right there is from Dr. Ike's garage. I finally got that thing out of my garage. This is awesome. And the kids are killing it. I mean, you can't get your name on the board. That thing's booked all day, every day during lunch, because the middle schoolers get to go use base 2 during lunch, which is a new innovation for us this year. But yeah, base is on fire right now. Kindergarten through 8th grade, just great stuff happening in our base program. And this is that traffic campaign that was being celebrated. These are little flyers on the right side of the screen while our administrative team is out in the community and we see somebody who maybe didn't catch one of the rules, like the park responsibly. We have these little flyers. You go, hey, here's some great parking options that instead of parking here on this person's lawn, you could maybe park at one of these places. So we have these great little flyers developed by Monica Darris, and it's a very cool, non-confrontational way to just be like, hey, we're all working together. And it's been a lot of fun, and people have been very respectful, and nobody's parked on any lawns. I was just kidding. But yeah, very proud of this work, and I think it's a celebration of our community. Our community's really been at the center of this. And Steve Korvik and myself and Mrs. Caillou, we couldn't be out on Maybrook or Bronco Creek or across the street on Hoyt if it wasn't for the parent volunteers who are in the parking lot helping wave cars in the morning. So it's really a great collaboration. Just want to celebrate that collaboration. And then, you know, we already had this item come through from MacGyver, but I want to celebrate community members on our committees. And Josh said, you know, we're trying to grow development in that same way. And we are at the place in our board history where I think we have the most non-board member committee members that we've had, and we're growing. And it's such a celebration. You know, Shara Murphy and Anna Thomas are both on the Impact Committee. And that impact team worked for a whole year on the white paper that's in the consent item tonight. And having committee members who are community members, not only board members, is such a gift. And you see I put Ashley Patel on there because Ashley Patel is a community member. Her children go to school here. She's also a teacher here. But she's not on the board anymore, but she is still on the development committee. So I love this idea that, hey, families, we'd love to see you on these committees and help grow these committees and bring more voices to these tables where this hard work is done. I mean, this white paper that is in the consent agenda tonight was no lightweight work. I mean, we were doing research and digging deep and having hard conversations, and it really wouldn't have been as rich as it was if it wasn't for, you know, all of the members on the team. So big shout out to those of you who are serving on a committee, but you're not a traditional part of the board. I love having you on there. All right, let's do some strategic actions and get rolling. These are all collaborations with our community. Talked about the K-8 traffic campaign. I was going to shout that out. We're talking about recruiting substitute teachers and staff. Those are my 2 strategic actions I'm going to talk about. The first I think I've kind of spoken about. Last week we sent out a video, and we sent out an all call good, and we sent out a letter home. I mean, I think we sent out a text message. Maybe there was some smoke signals. I mean, we said there is a traffic campaign coming. So we did all the front end communications, and then we put out 6 sandwich boards around the community, and then we had parent volunteers in the parking lot so that we could go out and interact with our families. And you know, it's interesting because we talk a lot about behavior as educators and how to create proper behaviors in class. And you know what we know is you can't just put out some signs and behaviors are going to change, you know, driving behaviors. What it takes is just like giving people new behaviors, not telling them to just stop old behaviors. So I love it. Like Steve Corving's out there and he's talking to families. He's going, hey, I see you stopped right here and you're going to have your student jump out of the car and jaywalk here. Let me give you, I got this flyer here. If you pull right around the corner here, you could stop right on the sidewalk and your student will get out on the sidewalk and get right to a crosswalk. And so instead of saying, don't do that, the team's out there saying, here's other options you can do. And we won't be able to do this all year long, but back in 2019, we had gotten pretty good at traffic around this neighborhood because we were in the habit and we practiced a lot. So we're back to the drawing board. We're gonna practice this for a while, and I'm sure we'll bring those sandwich boards out, you know, after long breaks to remind everybody of these behaviors. But we're hoping we can kind of retrain people one at a time through some conversations and, you know, get our good stewardship happening in the community again. The other topic I want to talk about is really serious. There's a staffing crisis in education, and it's really reached a national level, and it's for a myriad of reasons. People, not re-entering the workforce for different reasons. Substitute teachers are an issue across the entire state and across the nation. We're seeing schools face, potential like grade level closures due to staffing, not due to, just a COVID outbreak. But the reality is, if you have a couple of staff members go out and you don't have anyone to replace them, there's only so many admin or teachers on special assignment that you can put in there before you have to say, hey, we're out of bodies. And in the old days, remember, we could collapse classrooms. Take Mrs. Smith's classroom and be like, okay, we're gonna push half of you in with Mrs. Jones and half of you with Mrs. Hernandez. But you can't do that. We can't cram more kids in a classroom in the middle of a pandemic. That's a contact tracing nightmare. So substitutes are critical right now, and there's a severe shortage for sure. So we're doing what we do. We are reaching out to our parent community, and we are saying, hey, somebody in your family have a college degree and are willing to come on down and substitute? Oh, you don't have a credential? Have we got a deal for you? We'll help you get a substitute teaching credential. We'll even help reimburse you for taking the test and getting the credential. It's about a 30-day process to get it done, and we've already had a few families go, oh, I'll do that. We're also going to bring those families in once they get the credential pieces, and we're going to put them through some training, get them some shadow time so they can kind of watch the good practices of our Westlake teachers so that when they take these positions, they're able to help us out. Look, there are 1,133 students at Westlake Charter School. I don't know how many family members that calculates out to, but if we could get, no joke, if we had 10 people who could become subs for us, and each one of them was like, hey, I can do like once every other week, it would be a game changer for us. So this is a cry out to the community, but it's also information for the board. Like, I'll come back and let you know how we're doing. Right now we have 14 potential new subs in the pipeline, but what we see is like people come in and then and they fall out. There are 4 really solid subs that we have right now. That's 4. I don't think we've had a single day where we haven't tried to use all of them, and I don't think we've had a single day where an administrator hasn't been in a classroom. I think Amy Wells is subbing tomorrow. I'm subbing tomorrow. MacGyver was a PE teacher today. You were awesome today, Mrs. MacGyver. But this sub situation is real. We're attacking it, but we would love the support from our families. If there's anything we could do to get you to get a credential, come on down. Hope Golick?
Supremely random question, but on the right topic. So I hate dating myself in this fashion, but I'm going to do it anyway. I took the CBEST in 2002.
Yeah.
Does it expire? Do you know?
It's a great question, and I know that we have developed a little website here that puts us directly in contact with the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and we would love to answer that question for you. Okay. I'm not totally sure that we can employ board members because there might be a conflict, but we'll look into it. If any of you want to sub, I know Sean's name popped up in the tank, and we're like calling the lawyers. Can we have a board member sub? So I'll talk to the board members offline if you want to sub. But if it's not you, you should voluntold a spouse, a neighbor, a friend. We need people down here, and we got a great community, so let's pull on those community resources. It is true for substitute teaching, but it's also true for the rest of our program. Because we're probably doing, kids say, oh, we're doing the most. Because we're doing so much around COVID contact mitigation, we need people. So if we're going to hold strong at the gates and do symptom screening at the gates, and we're going to hand sanitizer, hand out masks, if we think that's making a difference, and I think it does when you compare our on-campus positive cases versus other local communities, schools, if we're going to continue doing that, we need the people to be there, and they need to have the right to be homesick when they have symptoms. So we need staff members there. If we're going to continue to have structured activity time out in the recess so that it's not just 112 kids in a dog pile, like we need adults out there helping to facilitate these activities. These things take people. We've calculated at one point during the day, we need 13 people out and about to make sure that kindergarten recess, first grade lunch, and middle school outdoor lunch is all able to happen safely and simultaneously. And we haven't had a single day yet where we haven't had at least one person out because of symptoms. Symptom absenteeism is a new issue, and we encourage our families and our staff, if you are having symptoms, you really got to stay home. So with that said, it creates absenteeism that we have to backfill. And so we are reaching out to families and saying, look, maybe you don't want to go out and get a credential. Would you be a substitute yard duty? Look, we might call you on a Tuesday and just need you for a couple hours. But could you be on that list? Come on in, we'll get you fingerprinted, you'll be a legit employee. So maybe you don't want to be a substitute teacher, but could you be a substitute for just like this outside yard support or working at the gates? Because we could use your support. We want to keep these positions in place because we think they're helping to keep our community safe, and that's what we've been trying to do the entire time. So enough said on that. You'll see us on the social medias, in the Westlake Weekly, kind of pushing this agenda. So share it with your friends. Any other questions on that topic or on the first? All right. Okay, it looks like a lot of updates, but maybe they'll go quick. Let's just go through a facilities conversation, skills assessment, contact tracing, attendance, and enrollment. Just a quick update. We are still in communication with the Natomas Unified School District on the potential acquisition of a piece of property, and we are working on it. We just got a great email from them this week about like, hey, we're all still working on some pieces. So I will come back and report to the board each month that this process is ongoing, and I wanted you to know we are still working on it. And as recently as just 2 days ago, we got an email that we were happy to receive. The next update is about skills assessment. Each year, the board goes through this skills assessment piece. And this year, based on board feedback, right, I got some feedback that said, hey, the Board on Track survey maybe isn't customized for Westlake Charter Board. And so we've done some work to recraft the skills assessment to really blend that Board on Track set of skills and the Westlake Charter School mission alignment. So the survey that you're going to receive after this meeting is 3 sections. Section 1, hey, where are you at on the procedural stuff, board? Do you feel like you know where the agenda's at, how to get to things? Procedurally, how are you doing as a board member? Number 2, how are you doing with our mission work? When you look at the mission and the work we're doing around the mission, how's that manifesting for you as a board member? Do you feel like you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening? And the last piece is strategic planning. We have the mission, we have the strat plan. Please give us some feedback on where you're at on how we're doing on the strat plan, where you like us to see go, where you would like us to see, where you would like to see us go next. Hey, the Board on Track assessment is a lot of clicky clicks. In this one, we've used some open text boxes to gather some narrative from you as well that we'll kind of code and analyze. Please, when you go to take this, it shouldn't be too long, but take your time and give some authentic feedback in this assessment so we can really drill down as a board and say, okay, this board has clearly said they need professional development in this area and are wanting to take the strategic plan in this direction. So it'd be great to hear from you as a board as we launch this. And it will launch, it launches tonight, and we will report out in October what we're hearing in our first brush analysis in October.
John, can I just add to that
Yeah.
real fast? And the reason for the short answers too is to help John and I in drafting some initial goals for the
Yeah.
board for the next year. And so I think particularly the strategic planning area, it will help us highlight maybe 1 or 2 areas of the strategic plan to focus on in the next year. And the procedural and mission work is really about, I think, professional development for the board, right? Where are the educational points that we should try and hit in the next year to make sure everybody feels prepared and has the tools they need to be successful. And so, sorry, I just wanted to add those things on because it was interesting to make our own for the first time, but it was very mindfully done. So anytime you put into it is very much appreciated.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I love we are in the goal setting time for sure. I want to talk you through contact tracing because I think it's kind of a hot topic. And I think parents who are watching will be interested, but I think you as a board need to kind of peek behind the curtain and see what's going into this work. last week in the Westlake Weekly, we put out a video that walked through our kind of 5 steps to contact tracing. We did a 1-pager. We put that in the Westlake Weekly as well. We also tweeted it out. We really wanted our community to see transparently, like, hey, this is what we're doing and how we're doing it. Right now, and I'll point to the dashboard on the screen here, but right now we have had 10 positive cases on campus from August 1st till today, and you can see that on our dashboard. I've linked our dashboard in the Westlake Weekly for the last couple of weeks, but it's always on the Return to Schools webpage on the right-hand bottom side. So I've heard from some community members, they've been kind of clicking on it every day, kind of looking, but we also send out notifications. Each positive case, when we're notified, kind of sets off a chain reaction of contact tracing. There's multiple interviews. We're interviewing the teacher, we're interviewing the student, we're interviewing the specialties teacher or the electives teachers. So there's lots of interviewing that takes place for each case, and then those interviews can lead to further interviews. Like, okay, this person said they were there next to this person. Let's talk to this person over here. It's quite complicated. It then leads to phone communications with families, email communications with grade levels and with whole school. If a person was COVID positive and spent time in more than one grade level, right, or a multitude of grade levels, to protect the anonymity of the person, because we never want to try to leave any clues as to like who might have been the person, because it's human nature. People want to know. Then we just broaden our communication and then we'll broaden all out to whole school. So sometimes you'll see a whole school email and go, why did that go to the whole school, not the grade level? Well, we're doing everything we can do to protect the anonymity of the person who might be identified as a positive case. If I was the only first grade teacher in the first grade classrooms today, and I walked in there and then I walked out, and then you got an email that said, hey, somebody was in first grade, and then you go, well, all the teachers are there. It must have been Mr. Ike. So instead, to protect the anonymity of the person, you broaden that communication. So there's a lot of that going on behind the scene, and there, the dashboard is being updated in real time as well. And so a lot of moving parts. I think the team's doing a great job at it. This team is not just the investigation team and the communications team, but it includes the health office assistant. Saba is doing a phenomenal job. We've also reallocated Ms. Bombarda to be part of Saba's team, because Saba's doing a lot of rapid response testing during the day, which takes a little time. And if somebody runs in from the playground needing an ice pack at the same time someone else needs a rapid test, now we have 2 people with 2 separate, areas to help the students out. So I just wanted you to know, kind of from the board level, that at the ground level, this work is happening every single day. We're seeing, up to 40 rapid response tests per week. And there is a statewide shortage on those tests. And so we are now only using the rapid response test for symptomatic students or those who've been positively identified as being exposed. However, with that said, this week we are launching a form to our community that says, well, would you like us to hold an after-school, non-rapid response, voluntary testing thing? You come to pick up your student, you and your student can walk over to this little space that we have identified, and you can get a COVID test, and you could do it weekly if you want. We're really starting to see that, on the national level, that the bringing back the regular testing for particular groups is going to help keep the spread down. And so that's something, if our community is interested in that, we're talking about launching that. But again, there are staffing implications there, which we are certainly managing. Those include a couple of these. We have created an on-call part-time contact tracing position. This person, when the demand is there, we task her with much of the contact tracing, data tracking, spreadsheeting, email communicating. We do the kind of more of the investigation on our side, then task her with completing the process. She's doing a phenomenal job. Without her coming on board, I don't know that we could actually be as efficient as we've been in each particular situation we've had. And then we've shifted one person, Mrs. Bombarda, to support our health office assistant. So we've had some shifts in staffing, there's some increasing in staffing, and that's going to come into play later when I talk about like ADA generation and expenditures, revenue and expenditures, because we are having to adjust staffing for particular needs. And again, if we do a Wednesday afternoon COVID testing for our community, there's going to be a staffing implication there as well. And so we'll make sure the board's continue updated on this. I don't mean to go too long. Does anybody have a comment, question, or concern on contact tracing in general? Good. I just want to do an enrollment update. The last time we talked enrollment was like the first day of school. It was the second day of school. So here we are 22 days into school, 23 days into school. I just updated the slide. The wait list has gone from 1,252 to 1,259. So the wait list, even though we've taken in a few students, actually has gotten longer. We still are fully enrolled kindergarten through 8th grade at 1,000. We dropped from 137 ninth graders down to 133 ninth graders. And that actually includes 2 new enrollments. So we did have several students opt to go to homeschool, reportedly due to like concerns over COVID, and we totally understand. And so they opted to not return to school. And we did, out of those 137, have a few just no-shows. It was the second day of school when we gave you those numbers. We thought they were coming, and 3 or 4 of them just never materialized. But we're still holding strong over the 125. We're at 133, and they're a great group. I can't wait for you to meet them. It is. I was over there today. They're just magic. Any questions on enrollment? Good, strong enrollment. And then attendance. We're really coaching our community to be symptom aware. Don't come to school if you've got any of these symptoms. However, a lot of these symptoms are very common symptoms for children in school settings. So where a student or even a staff member would typically kind of push through a sniffly nose or maybe another symptom, people are being very respectful and responsible and staying home. And that's wonderful. That's what we want. That's what we expect. We're also noticing absenteeism when a positive case is announced in a particular grade level. Hey, at your grade level, there was a COVID exposure today. We wanted you to know about that. Then the next day, because I think people are nervous, and rightfully so. We get that. Not an excused absence, though. We want our kids here. However, we're noticing it. We get it. We're currently looking at attendance. We look at attendance every week in my team, but the month of August was 91%. 91% is 5 points short of 96, which is what we base our KA budget on. We base our KA budget on 96%. We base our 912 budget on 95%. With a $10 million budget, every 1%, more or less, equals about $100,000. I am not making predictions. I'm not making forecasts. I'm not saying, we're falling off a cliff here, but I look at the number 91% and I go, okay. If that were the number at the end of the year, the ramification would be a $500,000 implication for us financially. Now, we are looking into utilizing the J13 waiver to say, hey, due to circumstances outside of our control, maybe we'll be held harmless for this. But one thing for the board to be aware on this revenue side of the house is that traditional public school districts have a hold harmless. If they have a big drop off in ADA, they'll get the ADA that they were afforded the prior year. But that does not hold true for charters as of today. Obviously, we're reaching out to our connections in the political entities, CCSA, those folks, and they're wondering if there might be legislation that helps to rectify this, and we'll come back and let you know. I just wanted to let you know, after 3 weeks of school, we're looking at that going, it's a tricky situation. We want to focus on the health and safety of our community, and we will continue to ask everyone to stay home when they're symptomatic. However, there's an ADA implication that we need to keep our eyes on for sure. Any questions, thoughts, or concerns on that? Probably concerns, but how about questions or thoughts? No? All right, team. Let's get to the good part of the show. I think I'm off stage, and at some point here we'll have Brown Act training. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Ike. Were there any board questions at all on Dr. Ike's presentation? Seeing none, that brings us to our consent agenda. I know we have a public comment, but before we take that, I do need to pull item B off of the consent agenda. We didn't have any August donations, so that item isn't actually in your packet. And then were there any board related comments to items A, C, D, or E at this time? Okay, so seeing none, and before I take a motion to approve, I guess I'll check back into with Steve to confirm we still have a member of the public waiting to comment.
Yes, I believe so. If you can give me 2 minutes, I'll be right back.
2 minutes? Really?
We have to be quiet again, I think. It's really hard.
Can't do 2 minutes.
Now I know how the kids in the cafeteria feel when I tell them they have to be quiet for the last 5 minutes and eat.
Steve should have said bumpity bump bump.
Bum, bum.
Right? If you can hear my voice, match me.
Quiet coyote.
This is exciting.
Okay, hold on 1 second, Steve. I need to fix the screen on this side. Hold on.
Sure thing. So I believe I'm talking to the board and to our participant. So if the participant would like to state their name and they have 2 minutes to make their public comment tonight.
Fantastic. I hope everyone can hear me. My name's Shara Murphy. I'm a member of the Impact Committee. I want to first say thank you guys so much for providing the opportunity to live comment tonight. Did want to mention it's a little bit difficult because the YouTube streaming doesn't, of course, track to the actual timing of the board meeting. And I wasn't able to hear on the Google Meet or comment on the Google Meet. So want to give major kudos for making it possible. Would love to be able to help you guys understand the technical issues I had in order to make it, continue to make it possible. You know, we struggle with whether or not we're opening or reopening or not opening. But thank you so much for that. I really just wanted to say, as far as the Charter Impact Committee white paper. So I'm not sure that you all understand that I also work with a couple of other groups, particularly Black Youth Leadership Project, the Natomas Black Parents United, and the Black Parallel School Board that I'm starting to get involved with. And so, you know, in involving with those groups, there's without a doubt a feeling among the Black community that charter schools are not as transparent and not as open to students of color or non-white students. And so I really just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to just note that Westlake has been doing this kind of work on student equity, on social equity for the last year and a half. And that, you know, it's really got to be trumpeted. I think, you know, particularly as we're, you know, working over the last week and a half with, you know, issues of intercom and public outcry. I think it's important, though, that the community knows that Westlake is thinking about these issues that Westlake has put 18 months into thinking about these issues, and that tonight's white paper really does present, I think, a first step for the Impact Committee to
Sorry, Shara, that's your 2 minutes. If you want to just wrap up real fast, you can.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, wasn't sure if that was my time limit. So yeah, just wanted to make sure that coming from, you know, a member of the Impact Committee and a Black person within Natomas and who's a part of other social groups in the area, I just want folks to know that that Westlake Charter is thinking about these issues, putting real brain power into them, and you know, suggesting policies or procedures that really promote social equity.
Great, Shara. Thank you for taking the time to come and speak with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Okay, I need to present my screen back to you guys here. So give me just 1 moment. And that is amazing. All right, we are back in action.
It was kind of cute though for a second there, where it was like its own like person, like does that make sense? Like the agenda was its own person box. That was kind of awesome itself. Okay. Well, that was awesome, and it worked too. So I'm sorry, I'm just really happy. With that, is there any further board discussion on the consent items? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion approving items A, C, D, and E.
I will move items A, C, D, and E of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
I can second.
Thank you, Lila. Amy, will you please take the vote?
Yes. Hope,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and Lila.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy. With that brings us to our Brown Act training. Woohoo! So, John, if you wouldn't mind sharing the slides again.
Absolutely.
I'm going to try to do it off the presenting screen slides, or the presenting screen here, so we'll see how this works. If you want to go ahead and go on to the next one. So basically, per our charter, we have agreed and are happy to train each year on the requirements of the Brown Act. With 2 new members, it's always great to get this information out early, and just so everyone knows sort of where we're starting from. So this presentation will cover the intent of the Brown Act, who must comply, what is a meeting, agendas and notice, closed sessions, legal remedies, and then the special COVID rules. So the intent of the Brown Act is really, actually in sort of along with what Shara had mentioned, is to shine light on the deliberations and actions of legislative bodies throughout the state to make sure that things are open and public. There was a time, some of us will remember, when a lot of legislative decisions were done, on bar napkins. So you see it often in movies. And this was sort of meant to make sure that the public actually had meaningful access to those government decisions so that they could understand and ask questions about why things were being done the way they were done. So with that comes the requirement that meetings be open to the public, held on a regular schedule, and follow a noticed agenda so that the public has a certain reliance on the work the legislative body is doing and a clear way to find out what's happening and when. There can be no secret votes under the Brown Act except for those that happen in closed session, and even those aren't secret. How that vote went down and what each member's vote was still needs to be reported. And even though this is the law, it is a good business practice as well as a best practice. It's always a good time to remember that Westlake Charter School is also a corporate body. And so what we do here also helps our corporation and our bylaws be successful. So John, if you'll advance it. So essentially the Brown Act applies to all legislative bodies. Those are governing bodies, subsidiary bodies, as well as any board, commission, committee, or other body that's created by charter, ordinance, resolution, or formal action of the legislative body, which is a mouthful. There is only one exception, and we'll go over it in just a bit, and that are ad hoc advisory committees. They have very specific requirements, though, and so be mindful that that's really a somewhat limited exception. Next slide, please. So with standing committees, and there are 4 committees, the Charter Impact, Development, Finance, and Governance are all standing committees of the board. So they have to follow all the same notice and agenda requirements that the full board has to do. The trick being, though, that they must be made up of a less of a quorum of board members, right? Because if you think about it, if you had these 5 people, right, on a standing committee at the same time, you would essentially be doing the work of the board, and that would be a way to sort of hide that work within a committee, because then it would telegraph how that item would eventually go in front of the full board, and that's not what the act was intended to do. Now, this really doesn't happen, but I will go ahead and cover it. As a member of this body, you can attend a committee that you are not a member of. If you do that, though, you must remember you have to be a passive, neutral observer, right? So you can't wince, frown, smile, give a thumbs up. You must be neutral in expression and body language, like I would like to call as flat face. You cannot show any emotion. You cannot ask questions. You cannot make comments. And that's because the committee can't take final action on their own. They are an agent of this They are an agent of this board. So what I mean by that is, the example I'll give is finance, right? Finance recommends to the board that we adopt the budget each year, but finance committee cannot adopt that budget on its own. Similarly, when governance reviews policies, they recommend them to the board for adoption, but they cannot approve those policies and put them into action on their own. So because of that, and knowing that the ultimate outcome will really come before this board, you don't really want to attend a committee you're not a member of, because you really don't want to get into that situation of violating quorum or telegraphing what your vote is going to be before you've actually voted on it and deliberated with the larger body. But if that does come up and there's a reason you need to attend or something else, please feel free to reach out. John and I can always contact our own legal counsel for their advice on any conflicts and let you know if there is a workaround or some other advice we can give you if it's something you really feel like you need to attend. So ad hocs, right, can be very useful. And Josh's slide is kind of for you because I could see how they would really be useful on the development side. I know it's something you've been interested in. The trick to them, though, is they have to be comprised of only the legislative body, right? So in your case, Josh, we could broaden that a bit by saying it could only be made up of development committee members and not board members, but still it has to be made up of that same body and it has to be less than a quorum, and it can only be created for a single purpose for a limited term. So typically that task should be completed in about 6 months. Anything longer than that, and we need to have a further discussion about whether or not it's really a standing committee of in this case, development, or a standing committee of the board, and approach them as if they were Brown Act required, right? The nice thing about ad hoc committees is there's no fixed meeting schedule. So you do have a greater sense of flexibility in terms of when you could get together and meet. And because you also don't have to post your agendas, there's not that sort of like watching the clock aspect that we have, for instance, before these board meetings and committee meetings. So just always remember that unless all the requirements on the slide are met, it is a standing committee and subject to the Brown Act. So meetings are when a majority of members of a legislative body have come together at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate agency business. Now, this can include use of technology. So if a majority of board members is on the phone or in an email to discuss an issue, that too can also be considered a meeting. And as we've seen recently, for a meeting to stay in operation, they must have a quorum of members not only there to get it started, but also to keep going. So what the Brown Act doesn't apply to is individual contacts and conversations, conferences that are open to the public. This example would be if we all attended the California Charter Schools Association conference, right? We could do that. We can also attend open and public side, that's a hard word to say. I'll go with advertise because I don't think I can get that word out right now. Community meetings. We can go to meetings of other legislative bodies. We do that sometimes, right, when we attend like the Natomas Unified School District meetings, and social and ceremonial events. The key, though, and again, another rule that I must always urge you to remember, is that even if you do these things, if you discuss agency business, it becomes a meeting. So don't do it. Just don't talk about Westlake, right? It's just easier that way. And I know it's hard because when we come together, that is something we all have in common, and it's something we celebrate and are super proud of, as we should be, but it just can get really slippery really fast. Next slide, please. Oh, so the funnest part of the evening, the violations with serial meetings. So Lila, Janie, these are the ones that I think honestly maybe trip people up the most. And I think it's probably likely the truly really the only area that I think board members really have to pay attention to. Luckily, because of our processes we have in place regarding the agendas and scheduling of meetings, a lot of that will be handled for you, right? As we go along, you'll get notices and whatnot. So the first thing to watch out for is the hub and spoke. And that is when staff briefs you, I use commissioners as an example here, but board members, prior to a formal meeting, and reveals information about the members' respective views. And if you picture a wheel, it's pretty easy to understand how this happens, right? So if you just picture information traveling up and down spokes and back. So, John talks to me and I tell him I'm voting yes. And then he calls Sean and says, oh, hey, I heard Hope's voting yes. That's a violation. And it doesn't have to be about a vote. It really can be about anything that's in the purview of this board's business, that you get a sense of how other board members are thinking about it, because it would allow you to potentially to achieve an outcome or understand the solution prior to it being openly discussed, so other people can hear that deliberative process. Now, the daisy chain more involves us as the board. So if I call Lila and I say, Lila, I'm voting yes on this. Can I count on you? And Lila says yes. And then Lila calls Janie and says, hey, I just spoke with Hope. We're both voting yes. Can we count on you to vote yes? Right? We've created that chain. And it just flows through boards. And oftentimes I will say that once it starts, you would think it would stop, but somehow it breathes on itself. And so the next thing you know, you have a daisy chain. And it's just easier never to tell anybody on the board what you plan to vote or how you're feeling about a particular subject if you don't have to outside of public meetings. That way the public gets the chance to hear what you're thinking. Email is tricky. The reason why Amy BCCs us is so that we can't do this. So, because the second you hit reply all, you have created, we don't know what type of violation you've done yet. We don't know if it will be hub and spoke or daisy chain, but once you hit the reply, it's one of those two things. And it causes a problem. And sort of a newer issue that we've had with serial meetings, thank you social media for all your wonderful attributes, is if we start okaying, liking, and retweeting other board member comments about board work, right? That in of itself may infer a decision has been made or a deliberative process. So best rule of thumb is not to discuss amongst any of us or other members of the board or respond directly to each other's own posts, especially when they could be or even remotely related to board business we may ultimately address here. And I know that's tricky to know what that is because, again, we are a culture of celebration. And I feel like I don't ever want to tell you not to celebrate what we do. So I don't mean it to be that limiting. I'll never forget the board meeting where Wayne from our council came and told us we couldn't do this anymore. And we looked at him like he was crazy because it's just who we are, right? So just kind of be mindful of whether or not you're taking a position on something or if you're really just celebrating. I know it can be tricky, but I know this board can handle it. Next one, please. Oh, yes. Oops, was that a briefing? So for collective briefings, there may be times when John needs to call us up and let us know that something's going to be on the agenda. The example that might come to mind for me is later around lottery time, if there was some issue with the lottery or how numbers were pulled, or luckily, that's not, thank you, technology. Now it's become less and less frequent as technology has advanced. But he can do that. He can even brief us in like pairs of two as long as he doesn't tell us what other people are thinking and we don't exceed a quorum, okay? We can also do retreats and workshops, but the trick with that is the Brown Act will apply most likely, right? Because you'll be workshopping something that the board will eventually decide upon. So whether it be goal setting, you know, or some task like that, it probably is a meeting and should just be posted. And then again, informal gatherings, this is on here mostly because when we met in public, right, you want to catch up with people. You've been out late or you've been doing the good work and volunteering and you want a bit of time to chat with your other board members. If there's more than a quorum in that chat, it could be perceived as a meeting and a violation of the Brown Act. So don't be afraid to do it, but just make sure you're not using that time to rehash the meeting, right? Don't re-review things you've already talked about or talk about future agenda items and what you'd like to see. By the end of the meeting, you need to either let John or I know what you'd like to see on the next agenda, or you need to contact us separately outside the group. Next slide, please. Okay, so there are 3 types of meetings that this body can have. We can have regular meetings, special meetings, and emergency meetings. And I'm actually gonna do the slide in reverse order because I think it just sort of lends itself to that. And by now you're bored and we'll just go a little different. We have never had an emergency meeting of this board. To be completely honest, I truly hope we never do. Normally, you can only hold an emergency meeting if there's a threat to life or limb. And it needs to be a fairly serious health emergency for that to happen. And that's why you only need to do 1 hour's notice, because it's really meant to sort of be like, we have to deal with this right now or people are going to die or be seriously ill. Now, special meetings you will see from time to time on this board because there'll be things that come up after the agenda's been set or things that come up in between meetings. And so we'll need to get everybody together to discuss and take action. Now, those only require 24 hours notice before the meeting. We have to let you know in writing, email is sufficient. And luckily, as far as I know, we don't have any newspapers requesting notice, so that saves us some time there. And then the last thing is like our meeting tonight, and that simply requires that the agenda be publicly accessible 72 hours before the meeting. And with that, we post the agendas in the windows of both campuses. Next slide, please. So there are some basic requirements for every meeting. Now, notice we've kind of talked about agendas, right? So that's 72 hours. All meetings must be open and public. There can be no conditions on attendance. Many boards used to have sign-in sheets to be able to track attendance. We can no longer technically do that. Board meetings must be accessible, and we have to be able to provide reasonable accommodations to make sure that all members do have the opportunity to attend. In the same way, we have had this happen at a board meeting before. We must allow members of the public to take photos of us, as well as audio and videotape our meetings unless they're being disruptive. I'll tell you it's disruptive by nature. It's just in and of itself, so that's not enough. But it's something to be I hope we never face it, but it's just something to be prepared for. Amy, I'll never forget Amy and I texting council during a meeting to confirm that in fact we had to let it happen. I think maybe 18 months over Zoom has taken care of some of that in terms of being recorded, and we're like on YouTube all the time now. But at the time it was quite strange. And then the voting, we must report how each individual official, each one of us votes, and record that in the minutes. Next slide. So we've already covered the freely and accessible to the public. And again, like I mentioned, Amy takes care of a lot of this for us. So thank you, Amy. So it's mostly just requirements to be aware of, just so you know. We need to give a brief general description of the items that are going to be done or business transacted. And that includes closed session items. But for those, we have what's called safe harbor language. So we know exactly what we need to put in order to make sure the school is protected. But ultimately, it's to make sure people have enough information to decide whether they want to attend, whether or not they want to read the item. and if it's of their interest. And again, the notices and the agendas must be on legislative agency's website. In our case, it is on our Westlake Charter website, and so that it meets that requirement. Thanks. Next slide, John. So this is when we need to deal with items that aren't on the agenda. So action can't be taken unless the majority of us decide there's an emergency situation we need to act on. And that requires either 2/3 of the members present, or if it's less than 2/3, a vote of all of us to say that immediate action is required, and it must have come to our attention before or after the agenda posted. So in this case, if we became aware of it on Tuesday or Wednesday, that would meet that piece of the requirement, and then we would just vote. And with only 5 of us here, I would argue that all of us would have to have voted to put an item on the agenda. The other exception is when an item's been on an agenda 5 days earlier. So if an example would be, if we had something on the agenda tonight that we weren't quite ready to vote on, but we're going to hold another meeting within 5 days from now, we could continue that, and it would not have to be on that next agenda, because I know, John, right? That's considered enough notice of the item. It's very strange. It's not what we'd use. If we were going to do this anyway, I'm sure we would post another agenda. I think where it's most often used is actually potentially like continued public hearings or those types of notices where you had to give 10 days notice prior to the event. And so it gives you some coverage. The other thing that can awkwardly come up at Brown Act meetings is public comment. And this is usually in response more for general public comment, because the other items on the agenda are being acted on. So the board can more freely discuss that item. Obviously, like tonight, because that item was on the consent agenda, a board member could have pulled it. We could have had further discussion. It wouldn't have been an issue. However, had it been a general public comment on a matter not on the agenda, the board isn't free to discuss that, right? Because it's not something we've given the public notice of our intent to discuss. So while it is super uncomfortable to tell someone you can't respond to them, it is something we have to do, but we can refer it to staff for response later. We can ask for a report back. We can say it will be on a future agenda. We have a lot of those tools in place. It's when we give the general reminder that we are not holding a public meeting, we are having a meeting in public so that people can watch us and see what we're doing, but that doesn't mean it's a free-for-all for public comment. So the public does have the right to address us on matters that are on the agenda. They can also address us on other matters that are within our jurisdiction. And again, reminder, if it's not on the agenda, we cannot take action. We also cannot prohibit people from coming to our meetings and publicly criticizing us, but we don't have to let them personally attack us. And we are able to put on reasonable time limitations and other regulations as are permitted. So we do have a 2-minute limit here. Agencies in the time of COVID have gone down to 1 minute in some cases, because public comment is actually a lot more prolific. And so there are boards that are spending hours at each meeting simply receiving public comment. Some other general sort of ideas and not really rules, but guidance on proper ways to address the board are included on our agenda if you ever want to take the time to review those. So this is more the records and public access. So as a general rule, agendas, minutes, and all handouts at board meetings are public records. Documents pertaining to an agenda item must be made available to the public. And it's a good thing website posting is okay, because that's how we do it. And this does also include staff handouts distributed to the board members less than 72 hours prior to the meeting. So for instance, our board packet is constantly updating, but it updates on the website too, right, John? Yeah. Handouts that staff give us during meetings, which again, when you're not in public, when you're doing it by Zoom, doesn't matter as much. But those also need to be made available to the public at the same time in the meeting. But if we had a parent or a member of the public come and hand a flyer to us, we don't have to make that available, for instance, to people in the audience until after the meeting's concluded, when we have enough time to actually create the copies for handing those out. So it's a nice little carve out in a way that it does sort of take into account a common sense approach about an entity's availability to have a copier in its meetings. Now, closed sessions are fairly rare. Again, it has to meet one of the specific exemptions that are in the government code. And it's not just to avoid the discussion of sensitive, embarrassing, or controversial topics. There are plenty of topics right now which I'm sure people wish that closed sessions apply to. But really, if you think about it, right, they're generally used to avoid revealing confidential information that would prejudice legal or negotiating position of a body or compromise the privacy interests of an employee. So, John, I'm using you as an example, I'm sorry, but for instance, the executive director evaluation is done in private because that would compromise his privacy interests as an employee of the school. In the same way as we talk about different locations for the high school, those are also done in closed session, so as not to cause any prejudice or give up our negotiating position for the purposes of acquisition. We're almost to the end now. Everyone get excited. So there are 4 key remedies that can happen for Brown Act violations. 2 on this slide and 2 on the next. The first way is civil action. And that's when the district attorney or any interested person may ask a court to stop violations, determine applicability of the Brown Act, and compel the board to record closed sessions. The Attorney General's office has a great document out called Open in the Public 5. If you wanted to read more information or you needed a sleep aid, no, it's not a sleep aid, it's a really good document. You could read more about it there. But basically those actions, what they're going to do, right, is they're going to seek invalidation. They're going to want to take away or to void, essentially, the action the board took that violated the Brown Act. But luckily, the law's built in a first chance for us to cure. So we will have an opportunity, hopefully, to address the issue. I don't know why I find the hand so shocking. It gets shocking every time, and I know what it is. Sean Berman.
Sorry, I didn't want to flag you down. I'm fascinated by this. They can compel the board to tape record closed session. Who gets to listen to that then? Would it be the district attorney? It would still say private, but less private?
Well, I have personally not researched it and I've not run into it before, but I would anticipate that it would be handled probably somewhat similarly to I just blanked on the legal term. So in camera. So what you would do is you would submit it to the court for in-camera review. So the court could then review it in their own confidential bubble to see whether or not there was a violation that occurred. What I don't know, or I haven't luckily had to deal with, is whether or not that same level of confidentiality extends to the district attorney. I would argue not, hopefully, right? Because their role would be prosecuting you. And so it would seem to give up some of your defense if you were handing over tapes to them. So I don't know about that. Let me say, I hope I never have to research it. Luckily, we have legal counsel that would have to do that for us at the board. But I do hope I never have to do that for a client. I would think that that would have to be a pretty draconian measure with long-standing issues. And I would not be surprised if that really arose post City of Bell, right? When they were giving everybody, including themselves, raises upon raises. I mean, that is something to keep in mind. A lot of the newer Brown Act requirements really came out of that, of the City of Bell, and out of response of, hey, we now know that some boards are bad actors. And so, as seems to be the case, unfortunately, when we have reactive legislation, right, we end up as even good actors being penalized for the actions of bad. And I don't think that's penalized. I don't want to use that word, but it certainly was more onerous on us to make sure that we went above and beyond to take these steps. The website publication actually was a big step for a lot of smaller entities who you don't have to do it if you don't have a website, but you do have a website, so then you have to post them. But a lot of them are very small without a webmaster or Dr. Ike's slick Google skills, right? So it's you can just see how it's a challenge for some. And so, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It is. I mean, this is my, umpteenth Brown Act thing, and, you're probably the fourth or fifth person that I've seen present it, and I don't remember seeing that, so I didn't know if it was new or just something that, was kind of not glossed over, but, kind of like you were saying, I certainly hope we would never have to do this because it's, wow.
Well, you're asking the court, and again, it can be like a private attorney general action. It can be a private person asking for this. So I'm fairly confident that it would be provided to the court for review, and it would not be done lighthearted, mostly because I don't know that the court really wants to take the time to listen. I love judges, but that'd be, some of our closed sessions, right, Sean, are 2+ hours. And so I think you'd have to show quite the history of non-compliance, as well as I would think it would take a bunch of subsequent votes where the board didn't discuss any of the actions, right, to kind of show this practice of using closed sessions as a way to escape the sunshine that's required by the law on the action itself. But again, cure. We have a cure right. We can fix things. If you didn't have a right, if they wanted to argue you didn't actually have quorum or things weren't properly noticed, right? You can always put it on your agenda again, fix it, and then that resolves the issue and makes it moot. So 2 more we have to go, and one of them is criminal. I will never forget poor Ryan Core being outed. He took a quiz and passed this after having listened to his mom present it many moons ago. So we would be responsible. Some are word to take action and invalidate one of our own actions. We would be responsible for court costs and attorney fees. But luckily, board members, we're not going to hand the bill to you. We would just hand the bill to Westlake. So there is that, though I don't think Sean and Josh and I would really want to deal with that in finance. So let's not ever get a award against us for violating the Brown Act. The district attorney does have discretion for criminal complaints. The violation must be done with improper intent to be a misdemeanor. And that really requires an overt act and intent. So the board must have taken action and not a deliberation or a vote, but really a collective decision outside of the board meeting to meet that requirement. And then we must have specifically intended to deprive the public of that information, even though we knew they were entitled to see it and entitled to understand how we were going to make that vote and how that action came about. There was an uptick at one point in district attorneys following these complaints. But I have not heard that recently. Things are a bit trickier in the times of COVID and with caseloads. So I'm sure the district attorney would love to hear about violations. I just think, again, with the curing, that there are some steps we can take prior to it ever receiving the criminal complaint level. I think we're on the one more slide, right, John? Yay! So this one really feels sort of awkward to present at this point since it's set to sunset on September 30th. We do have some running bets as to whether or not we think it will be extended given the current case numbers, but we'll have to see. Case numbers in the 20s and 30s per 100,000 6 months ago would have shut everything down, and now I don't know what they mean. So we're just going to keep going for now and let you all know that we might be meeting in person in October. We might not. We don't know. For anyone out there still listening to all this, we really don't know. So the existing teleconferencing rules were pretty onerous, right? You didn't do it often. Because you had to post the agenda at least one teleconference location, and typically it's one board member who may be on vacation, say, and is staying in a hotel and would need to then post the agenda in their hotel 72 hours prior and find a way to then open that location so that people can come and address the board at that hotel. You can see how it gets pretty unworkable pretty quickly. So the executive order came to be, right, because of those teleconferencing rules and how it would go about, and not wanting people to congregate even for the purpose of one location to give public comment. So Governor Newsom waived all provisions requiring physical presence of members, staff, or the public as a condition of participation in the meeting. You are required, and you see it on the agenda, and I preface it at the beginning of the meeting, right, that we've let members of the public know that they can both observe and offer public comment. And we must allow members of the public to address the meeting. And we've done that during email. We were testing out a new way tonight for verbal and email. It's an evolving practice and process. And we'll just have to see what happens. Really, we don't know. Check back in next Wednesday. I might have a better idea. The earliest that we've talked about knowing in my office is probably a week from tomorrow, so the 17th, if not in the early 20s of the, yeah, so it's a little tricky. And I'd love to be able to tell you if we are meeting in person on October, but I really can't. I can just say it's before time change, so I would be prepared to be outdoors. And in a certain place called the Oasis, if we have to do it. The other thing that's not on this agenda is that because we do have 2 locations, we will continue to broadcast our meetings so that families from both sites can attend. So we have more technology that we're going to be working on over the next few weeks anyway, to make sure that can happen if we have to go back to meeting in person. But so there's more new to come, but hopefully this at least, I'm sorry for the length, but it gives you a solid preface of the rules and requirements and just the basics and what applies to us. Obviously there are scenarios in here that have not been addressed. So if you do have a specific question, we can answer some now, but if you have a really specific question, I would urge you to email John and I, and then we can run that by our own legal counsel, just to make sure that we give you what our lawyers would say is the best practice for that. But I'm happy to take any questions, or if John, you have any comments.
I hope there is one public comment that it was on a consent agenda
Oh,
item. I'll just hold on to it though while the board, if the board has any questions, comments, or concerns regarding Brown Act. Board Act.
You're not asleep, so I'll take that as a success. And Sean heard something new, so that's always good. My coworker who did that particular slide, I'm sure I will be sure to tell him that you commented. He'll love that.
I learned something new too, and I've heard this for 14 years.
What'd you hear? Maybe hopefully I didn't get it wrong.
The social media part where you guys can't, like, I never even thought about that. I had to stop and think, have they ever done that before? You haven't, but I just didn't know that that was a thing.
Yeah. No, I forget Wayne's last name. I feel super bad about that. Yeah, but I'll never forget it. We were on Pebblewood. And the reason I remember it is because I fought him about it. And as you know, lawyers are prone to do.
Yeah, I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But I never would have thought twice about it before you said it.
No, and I honestly hadn't thought twice about it before he said it.
Yeah. Lawyers, man.
No, I think actually.
I'm kidding.
No. It's true for one. But for two, I think it's another thing that COVID's really highlighted for me, right? It's been very hard to remain connected to people. And for better or for worse, social media is a way of doing that. But it also is, rife with misinformation and miscommunication. And so if we all like the same thing, right, but not everybody understands it, then it turns into a viral tweet that actually says the opposite of what you said. And then, right, you can't stop it because it's outside your domain.
Yeah.
So I just don't want to be that. I just don't want to be that case study someday. Remember that school that said this, and then someone said they said that, and you see it all the time, unfortunately. And right now, people are very
Heightened.
Yes, heightened's a great word, right? We're sensitive, and we're just trying to make it through. And I think that's just super hard, and social media, unfortunately, presents its own unique challenges for boards and committees, for sharing their thoughts in a way that can be interpreted as actually being action.
Makes sense.
Sorry, long answer, short. I have a lot of, I think it's be a great research topic. I always think of research topics. Okay, John, I'm not seeing anything, but why don't you go ahead and, if you wouldn't mind, doing the public comment, and that way, if by some chance we need to go back and undo something or redo something, we have that opportunity.
Yep, very good. Thank you. Excellent job on the presentation. Thank you. Hope, appreciate you. This comment was in the bucket. I didn't see it though until you started presenting, and then so this is going back to public comment on consent item C. It says, with an agreement between Westlake and Sierra Outdoor Schools on the agenda, it appears that Westlake is preparing for the possibility of sending sixth graders on the annual science field trip in April of 2022. It's hard to imagine that happening given the last year and a half, but assuming, of course, that the COVID situation improves in a way that makes such trips safe, I hope the board and admin will consider if and how any of these milestone trips like SOS and Age of Sail can be made up in some way for the students who had to miss them since the pandemic began in March of 2020. As a parent of 4 Westlake students, I know how incredibly impactful these trips were. They helped forge student friendships and instill Westlake's core values. I hope that could be evaluated. Thank you, Carissa Richards Johnson. And I'll send this to you, Amy, for the minutes.
Yeah, no, I'll acknowledge that comment only because I would love to go back and redo promotion. Sean too, right? We both, and Santa Cruz. Like I know admin will do whatever they can to make sure each grade level has what it needs to feel supported and to build collaborative relationships. But Chris,
yeah, I missed Age of Sail with James, and I was finally going to get to chaperone, so that was a bummer for both of us.
Luckily, we have an admin team that's always thinking outside the box. So I'm sure there'll be more to come on those potential activities later. Thank you for reading that into the minutes, though, John. With that, future agenda items. Well, in October, we'll hopefully have some goal setting, and at the very least, some initial review of your responses on the skills assessment. I know John's also planning on giving just sort of a view, right, John, of sort of where we currently are academically and where we're headed.
Yeah, I'll do my academic presentation in October.
We're not to first interim yet. So, that'll be the main thing. There may be some policies, but more to come. That brings us to reflection. So what worked well or what would work better if? And Sean, do you mind if I start with you? Okay, so I'll go Sean and then Josh.
So amazingly, I'm going to say I really liked the Brown Act training. Kudos to you, Hope. As I said, it's, my umpteenth, maybe not as many umpteenth as Amy, and probably not as many umpteenth as you, Hope, because I know you have to do this as part of your job as well as a member of boards. But it was good. It got all the points across, and as you noted, nobody fell asleep. So yay!
Because I was watching. Thank you, Sean. Josh, and then Jamie.
Yeah, thank you, Hope. Wanted to talk about the Impact Committee's white paper and reading the brief and fantastic stuff. I just wish, given the amount of time and effort that they put into it and the content involved and a lot of the things that went into it, that they would have had an opportunity to present it, dive into it a little bit more. I don't know. I know we had a lot with the Brown Act, but I think we missed an opportunity to really highlight that document a little bit more. And I wish going forward, when a committee puts that much work into something, to maybe just have them presented, even if it's quick or something along those lines. So I just wish if we were to do it over again, that they would be able to present that to the board.
Thanks, Josh. I think I said Janie and then Lila.
I loved hearing a real person comment on the work the Impact Committee did, and it was very moving to hear her speak on that important work, and that really did make my night and my evening. So that was definitely a plus tonight to hear someone to speak out loud and then to hear her voice as well.
Thanks, Janie. Lila?
The live public comment was great. It was great to hear somebody's voice. I was curious about the technical issues that Shara brought up about how the experience of watching the board meeting and trying to participate live, how those don't match up. If that's something we continue doing, just thinking about how does that work for anybody who is going to give live comments.
Thanks, Lila. What worked well for me was appointing a new member to the development committee. I am super excited to have Nirali on board. She also seems super ready to jump in with both feet and help Josh and team get the work done there. So that was a great moment for me. Amy, John, Steve, do one of you want to go next? I'll let you all fight out who goes when.
Go ahead, Deb.
I was just gonna, never mind. I am really proud of the Impacts Committee's white paper as well. It is very amazing and awesome, and was a lot of good, rich work for them. And it was fun to sit on my side of things and kind of watch them all get in there and have the conversation that needed to be had. So it was great. I'm glad it came to fruition for them. Super proud.
Thanks, Amy. I think, Steve, you're next.
I just would reflect and thank everyone for their patience as I was clicking and muting and unmuting and screening and everything else on the backside. So again, thank you for your patience with that tonight.
Thanks for doing it, Steve. I know it was sort of a later assigned task, so I appreciate your willingness to take it on. John, you want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah, I think it's a really opportune time to reflect on why we have committees. I think that not all work can be done. You know, these board meetings would be 16 hours long every month if we didn't say, hey, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's break up into committees. And one of our committees spent 18 months from the very impetus of this white paper when there was like, hey, we got this strat plan. What's a piece we could attack? How about goal area 1-1? Let's kind of go after that. Let's start scratching, read some literature, had some hard conversations. Like, that is why we have committees, because they do the hard work that it would take us too much time to do here. So you have these committees, they did this work, and tonight is the first time, and lots of committees have done great work. Finance has done amazing work. Governance has done amazing work. Heck, Impact the first time around wrote our strat plan. So like the work's been done before, but this is the first time we've received like a guiding document, like a white paper that really had kind of a research foundation and background. I'm really proud of, I think functionally, that's what worked for me tonight. It was like, Josh, I agree. I think we should have lots of discussions about these important topics, but procedurally, functionally, it was nice to be like, yeah, people worked crazy hard, and now we have a document that says, look, we can take action. I liked it. I think it worked for me that this committee worked incredibly hard. We heard their voices, we see their work, and it's going to propel our actions forward. That it wasn't just rhetorical. It's an action-oriented document. Here's 12 things you can do tomorrow to be awesome. I loved it. The committee's work, and it showed tonight.
Yeah, and John, you and I are always looking at the procedures and the way we do things at the board meeting, right? Tonight followed those procedures that we have in place, and maybe we need to change them. We certainly are doing that. We didn't necessarily do it tonight because the agenda didn't really set itself up for that, right? But we are trying new things, for example, with your report, right? And splitting that up. So there's a lot in play, Josh, so I appreciate your comment too. And we're just evolving, right? That's the best thing about reflection, is it's our time to hear feedback from all of you. And John and I always meet and discuss it and try to figure out how best to implement it. So you gave us some good nuggets to work on tonight. With that, I will go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 8:15.
Nice work, everybody.
Everyone have a lovely rest of the evening.